On today's episode, we sit down with Erik Eckern, who is a phenomenal human being and a key player on Team Happiness. Erik is a father of three and has been married for 10 years. And he has applied play theory in the workplace in profound ways. And I'm so excited for you to hear our conversation today. Erik is currently the director of marketing analytics in his role, and he has some awesome stories that we dive into about how to apply play theory in high stress situations, in team settings, and in ways that help communication and positive cultures flourish. It is an awesome conversation. So buckle up because here we go. Welcome to the Happiness Playbook, a podcast where we explore the why and how of happiness. I'm your host, Neil Hooper, and I just wanted to remind you that life is a team sport, so let's play together. I am so excited because today I have a dear friend, Erik Eckern, who is joining us. And this has been a long time coming, actually. Ever since we started the podcast, we've been wanting to have you on. And he's just an incredible human. He is really passionate about principles of truth. And he has taken play theory and applied it profoundly in his life. And we're going to talk a lot about how he's applied that in a professional setting, in his personal life. And he just has a lot to add there. And as you heard in the bio, a lot of great experience and insights there. So Erik, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this chance to talk with you.
Oh man. Well, I want to just dive into the conversation here because there's so much we can talk about. First off, I just want to get a little background maybe on let's talk about you professionally and personally, and just give us kind of the high level of where you're at in life, a little bit about your family, and then let's talk about your profession and your career, and then we'll kind of dive into that.
So I live with my family in South Jordan, Utah. We've been here for a couple of years now. I met my wife when we were in school. And we got married, had our first son the last week of school. I had finals, left the hospital to take my last final. And I got my first job with Thomas Arts. Started as an intern. I was doing an account coordinator for Zions Bank. Had more kids, moved across the country to Washington, D.C., to support more clients still with Thomas Arts. And then we were able to move back and as we had our third kid, so we could be by our family. So I've been married 10 years, 3 kids. It's good. It's a good time.
Oh, and I'm so excited to dive into the familial applications of play theory for sure. At 10 years under the belt. Congratulations, by the way. That's a major milestone.
Thank you. Yeah, it is.
10 years. We just celebrated 5. So we are halfway there, but very cool stuff. So you're working at an ad agency. You've got a beautiful little family. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard ad agencies can be a little intense in terms of, the environment you're in and, maybe the hours. So I guess first off, is there any truth to that? And if so, to what extent is that kind of a demanding professional environment?
Oh yeah, absolutely. What you've said is exactly true. It's you're on the hook for your clients. So if they need something, you're reacting to it right away. Deadlines are usually pretty crazy. They come fast. We're waiting on people to make decisions, but as soon as that decision is made, we need to execute. And so it's you're on all the time. You're working long hours. You can't really push deadlines. And so if you haven't scoped the project appropriately, you have to deal with that. Really demanding, really hard. And a lot of times it all falls down onto maybe 1 or 2 people who are working really late at night to get this over the finish line. And it can be exhausting for sure.
So I have a few friends that work in ad agencies, and they have shared exactly what you just shared, that it's, especially with these clients that you have, and you are just, like you said, you're on the hook, and the pressure, especially as those deadlines get closer, like you said, is immense, right? And the other thing too is you're working with a lot of other people. How many people on average are you kind of coordinating with on any given project?
On a small project, that's probably about 5 people, but most of the time we're trying to coordinate things across 12, 15 people on different departments, the strategy team, a media team, the account team, creatives. It depends, and there, you'll have several representatives from each of those places all trying to help with whatever this meeting is or this proposal is or whatever is going on. It can be quite a few.
Wow. Okay. And this is good for everyone tuning in. We're talking about an ad agency, and it happens to be a demanding role, but this applies to anyone in any role or any organization. Because the truth is, you feel the pressure no matter what. And while some roles you could say are higher pressure than others, we all feel this pressure professionally and just in our personal lives. I think one of the most demanding jobs is a stay-at-home parent, and so don't tune out just because you may not be in the workforce or you don't feel like you have a high pressure role, because what we're going to talk about here and the value that Erik's going to add in kind of managing that from a play theory perspective and a culture perspective is very key and very important. So we have kind of these high demand situations, and you're working with a bunch of other people. So first I kind of want to set up some of the obstacles, right, for you being successful in your role. And then I want to dive into play theory and really how the principles help you create that unity and overcome the obstacles. And so tell me about, when you get a project, especially like a bigger project for a high profile client, and there's a lot of pressure, especially in regards to when you are working with others on the team. What are some of the things that go wrong? What are some of the headaches that you encounter through that process?
Sure. Well, the first one and always the biggest one is trying to interpret what the client wants, right? They'll say something, and if you take exactly what they say and execute exactly on that, you're probably going to be wrong. There's the unasked questions that you need to try and figure out, and so you're trying to add on to or figure out really what they really need. The next one, though, is then the roadblocks you run into as you're doing it, where if everything worked perfectly, your data was just right, you ran into no roadblocks, great. But things take longer than you think they might take. You go down this path in terms of let's say you're trying to find the right target audience, and so you have the data that you got from them, and you start analyzing it, and you realize you're not finding any significant relationships between the data points that they provided you. So what do you do from there? Where do you go? The ask now is something that we can't do. And so, things that we can't plan on or don't know or don't expect, those come up on all sorts of projects.
Wow. And
Yeah,
just to pause you real quick there. So just make sure we're understanding. That's like, so the client's telling you, they're saying, okay, this is what we want you to do. Here's the data that we think supports that ask and that need. And now you're looking at it and it's not even close. And so
oh,
what they
sure.
asked,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. So just to be clear on that, so that's great. I want to kind of go back through it and work through each one of these, but go ahead and keep sharing.
Well, and then it's just we'll put together kind of the first look at what we're trying to do, and we'll present that to an internal group before we take it to the client, and then they're going to start poking holes in everything that you're presenting, saying, well, this isn't good enough, or that doesn't make any sense, or this is too obvious. There's a lot of criticism that you can get with that first internal review. And it always feels like to me they're surprised that we're putting this in front of them, where this is our first draft. is the first thing we're looking at it, and we're trying to collaborate here. And it seems like people are really just ready to more tear it down than try to help us move toward the next draft, which would be what's more client ready. So that's one is always really challenging, is that internal review from, kind of the cross-functional team.
Awesome. So we have kind of that communication with the client. There's, kind of that executing on their needs and helping them understand what the real value add can be.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of that feedback piece, internally amongst yourselves. Is that fair?
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's kind of break this down, because I think, again, we're talking about your role and that environment, but these are things we can all relate to. And so communication, anytime two individuals are talking, we are communicating. So help me understand, how has play theory and specifically what principles really benefited you in that communication process with the client, and really making sure the expectations are aligned and that you're going to add value for them?
The first one, being present, right, is key in that moment for sure. And especially in an agency where you're multitasking and people, pride themselves on doing lots of things all at the same time. In these client meetings, turning that down and being fully attentive to what the client is asking has been really important in terms of not only understanding what they're asking, but what they're not asking. And I think by being present in those moments, we're able to clarify in the meeting and not afterward trying to interpret or figure it out. We can ask these follow-up questions. So what you're saying is this, and okay, so that means then we could also look at this, or we could add by doing this. And so we've now automatically opened up some more opportunities for ourselves in terms of how we execute on this project, right? Where they're being tactical with, I need this, this, and this. By being present, listening, and being aware of exactly what they're wanting, but trying to really roll it up to what is the problem they're solving, we're able to push this project forward and really help that portion of the project where a lot of times there can be miscommunication. And so being present in the meeting and not relying on someone else who's taking notes in the meeting or something like that, I think has really helped us really understand what they're doing. And the clients, they recognize that. I think a lot of times we do get credit where Tom Sarts understands what we're looking for. They know what we want. And a lot of it is that strategy of being fully attentive and aware of what's going on just in that first ask.
Oh, yeah. And that's huge. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because reading between the lines is a really important thing to do, especially when you are trying to help someone solve a problem. And so I love that you brought that up, but you can't do that unless you're being present and eliminating that distraction. And I know, especially in a more chaotic environment, especially a professionally chaotic environment, or high stress, high pressure environment, it's really easy, like you said, to multitask. And people, we're so weird. We almost wear that as like a badge of honor, right? Like,
right, yeah,
how many
totally.
things can I do at once? And it's like, no, that's taking you out of the moment, and you're not going to be there to identify those, like you said, the underlying need and what they're really wanting. They might be saying one thing, but deep down, there's a totally different issue at stake. And you have to accept and build, and you have to go out of your comfort zone and do all that, but you can't do any of that unless you're present. And so I love that you brought that in. That's awesome.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts before we go to the next one?
I think the one other item too I would add to that is the idea of being open to learn, or where a lot of times when we come in, we are experts in the field that we're working on, right? We know what the right solution might be or could be, but with our clients, they are also smart people. And so not being coming into the room or coming into this meeting to be the smartest person in the room allows us to have an open mind, have humility in that conversation. And clients like to be smart and feel smart. Everyone likes to feel smart. And so in terms of this opportunity for relationship building, which is key toward having a good outcome in this project at the end, if they feel smart, they feel elevated, um, and like you understand them, then you're gonna be great going forward. But you coming in to try and dominate this conversation or seem like you are so smart and so much better than this other person, it just really destroys that opportunity right out of the gate.
And you're talking about look outward, right? This is the epitome of look outward, which is don't go into the room, like you said, wanting to be the smartest person in the room. That's that right there. Oh, if you get nothing out of this conversation, I think that nugget alone is worth, plastering on your wall, because the second it becomes inwardly focused and you're wanting the status and the prestige, then they feel that. Your client feels that, your spouse feels that, your children, your friends, that energy is very off-putting, and will greatly diminish your happiness. We're all about the happiness playbook, how to be happy. And so that's a great way to not be happy. So I'm glad that you brought that in as well. And, this is kind of a great segue into the second point you mentioned, which is when you do get an ask from a client, maybe you were present and you're trying to coach them, but then they still come out and they say, hey, you're going to do this for us, and here's why. And then you realize, ooh, if we go that route, there's going to be disappointment. And so how do you manage those situations? What principles do you use?
Really, that opportunity of accepting and building, right? Where if we know what we're trying to do and we know what the objective is moving forward, maybe this one strategy of execution doesn't work, right? And that's the blocker. But being able to take a step back and understand, well, what is it we're trying to do? How do we say yes to that? And what can we do to add to it? And how do we pivot on that? In terms of, again, tying it back to that macro problem, even if this execution of it didn't work and it's going to go sideways, because we're tied to this, we can kind of see the objective of this other side. It doesn't even have to say, well, we'll scrap that completely. Let's take that, let's enrich it with this other data, or let's pull in this other, let's look at it through a different methodology or something like that. And if we do that, then we might get to that same outcome you're looking for. And so it's this opportunity to collaborate and build on what was already set up as this way forward. And so even if we're just taking maybe a step back and pivoting a little, we're not really just scrapping the whole thing from the beginning, and we're just saying, what, this will work as long as we add to it in this way. And so really trying to build from there.
And that's so important, because if you head down a direction that ends up being the wrong direction, if you just stop there, then it's all for naught, and you do lose out. I mean, at that point, you could say that was a waste of time. But if you accept that and build on it, you're now moving forward with lessons learned, and what didn't work. And that's where the magic of accept and build, I think, really comes in, especially in a professional setting where you're going back and forth with a client or a customer who's paying you good money and wanting results. And sometimes it's hard to help the client be patient through that process. And I'm sure you've probably experienced that. I know I have in my professional life. And I guess that's where the look outward piece comes into play, as a safety net, right, for the relationship. But I love what you're saying here, and how important it is to, no matter what happens, to just kind of embrace that, learn from whatever direction you went that was the wrong way, and then move forward in a new direction where you can add value.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. So the third thing you mentioned was kind of this idea of internal feedback. And that can be hard. We actually, on our last episode, this Star Wars special, not to be confused with the Star Wars Christmas special, totally different quality of program. All the Star Wars nerds are laughing right now. But we talked about, Anakin has this relationship with Obi-Wan in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where he's just kind of feeling this angst against Obi-Wan for the feedback he's getting. And so we kind of touch on that. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about you. And I want to know how you go about those scenarios and what principles you apply to navigate that.
I'm going to digress actually and tell a story from
Please.
maybe a while ago. When I was first in my job and I was working with these people, I would get feedback that was super negative, and I'd come back to my desk almost fuming, where it's just like he doesn't know, they don't understand, right? Like I'm putting out something that's really good. This chart is easy to read. He's just not getting it, and just putting all of the focus on this other person instead of myself. My supervisor at the time helped me reframe that situation. And it was when these principles became really a good focus for me again. And I see how these can apply in this situation. And looking at it from his perspective, he's going to have to go and talk to the client. He has to present this chart. And if he doesn't understand it, he's not going to feel smart. He's not going to look good in front of the client. And so it's this idea that my job is to make other people look good. And as soon as I understood that, I could take that feedback, even if it was given negatively. It's coming from their own insecurity and their own fear that I'm not going to look good in front of the client, and that's fine. And that's a valid fear. They need to maintain that relationship. They're maintaining, it's business, it's money. If we lose the client, that's not good. And those are all the thoughts that they have. And so when they're looking at my chart and they're saying, this isn't clear, I don't need to take that so personally. And so the idea of, if my job is to make someone else look good and they have negative feedback about this, or they want that change, that's valid feedback. And so I can take that in, and now let's try and make this presentation a little clearer, or let's maybe do some training or whatever it may be. But it's completely valid, and that approach to every meeting though has I feel like really changed the collaborative culture and connection that my team has helped spread throughout the agency, where it doesn't need to be this point of friction, but it really can be this collaboration point where we really say yes to what people are offering up in terms of feedback. Hey, I'm not understanding this. Can you walk me through that again? Oh, yeah, that's good feedback. Let's figure out what part's not making sense to you. Really helping them get to feel comfortable, feel like they're participating in the development of this, and that they're not pushing against a force that's going to fight them on everything, has really changed this dynamic on these internal teams, where we all ultimately have the same objective, but it's just we all have maybe our own ideas of what we think is the best way forward. By looking outward and really letting someone else or focusing on kind of this generous look at other people, letting them say, you can have a good idea. Your idea could be better than my idea. And it's not that we have to roll over and let everyone else direct our lives, but it's a matter of building on what they're offering and not trying to just defend what they have without me having to change anything. And so it's a lot of work over several years to kind of get to a really positive place. But I think we in the agency, we've made a big difference by taking that approach to all of our projects.
You shared so many awesome things, and we don't have frankly, we don't have enough time to go through all of them, unfortunately. But I love that you said, that validation piece, and really you're mentioning let go and play too in a huge way here, right? Which is big on receiving feedback and leaving your ego at the door. That's hard to do. That's really hard to do. You kind of alluded to this idea of assuming the good intentions of those giving the feedback, which is such a important mindset shift, because like you said, the collective goal is to add value for your customers in the business, and getting that constructive feedback is a way for them to help you do that better. And that's, the what and the why of everyone is the same. The how, we might have different ideas, like you said, of how to get there. But if you can leave your ego at the door, assume good intentions, and validate people as that feedback comes, that's going to shift the culture. And this is, I really want to get into this too, because you've alluded to this, this cultural shift that's taken place since you've been there, and since you've been able to play a role in implementing some of these principles in your team and how that's kind of spread. So I kind of want to know, a little more there. If you could, divulge a little bit more, expound on that, kind of what were the things, and we've talked about all of them, right? All of these things add up and make a difference on the culture. But for anyone listening who might be in a team setting that's maybe not functioning properly, or maybe it's a little toxic, and they're really curious to know how they can be the catalyst for some of that positive cultural change, I want you to expound on that a little.
Yeah, when I first started out, I was on a team that had a pretty, I mean, toxic is the perfect way to put it. It was a toxic culture where people were afraid to say what they thought. Um, the you got put down for suggesting something different than what the client had asked. I mean, I remember my boss's boss one time came in and told me to never talk to a client the way I just did, when really all I had done was try to correct, and they were trying to clarify an issue and trying to understand what was going on, and saying, hey, it looks like you need one version of this HTML file, and that someone on your team then will version it 16 ways. And they said, no, we need 16 versions. I said, okay. So we built and made 16 versions. And then on the email chain, it said, thanks, we needed one. And we'll update it with the current copy and the current colors. We just needed the template. Okay. So,
So they were really wanting what you originally had proposed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's like, but because of how internally that was handled, there's just so much fear in terms of trying to get to that end result. This was a really small example, but it was happening on big projects. And at this point, I wasn't, a big player on the team, and, wasn't managing a team or anything, but it really started at the top there, and trickled down in terms of this team culture and this collaborative culture, and being open in this culture. Getting to this place here, it did involve, some leadership change, right? Some people, in the workplace, people come and go. The opportunity is finding what I could control. And there was one year in particular where the technical team that I was on, it was like a bunch of people left at the same time, just that hard burnout of I can't take it anymore. And we all ended up meeting with like the president of the agency to kind of talk through how our year went. And that was the year when I had that, advice from my supervisor in terms of thinking about this other person. And, other advice was, people don't know what sort of reaction they're going to get when they come and talk to you. And it's like, sometimes I'm really easy to work with, sometimes I wasn't. And so this idea of being consistently looking outward, that really kind of shaped that whole year for me. So while everyone around me was having a hard time, I had dedicated parts of my day to go around, talk to people, and collaborate with them, show them what I was working on, get their feedback. So it wasn't even just in those big meetings or at those points, but it's really trying to foster relationships and building that kind of trying to improve the perception of what it was like to work with me and the technical team, and to say, hey, we're going to listen to you. We're not going to push back on you. We're trying to kind of build these bridges. And so that idea of us not having to be the smartest people, or you have to listen to us. If you don't take our ideas, then we're going to throw our arms up in the air and leave the room. Right. Like, right. Which is a thing that happened that year. Right. Where it's just, and so it took one-on-one work with people, but applying these principles. And so then as those people left, and we brought more people on, it was the opportunity to establish those principles where I saw them working, and say, we're not going to be the smartest people in the room. We're going to reach out and collaborate. This is going to be just as important to your job as the charts and the presentations that you're building, is building these relationships and making other people look good. That's your job. And if you're doing that, that's great.
And to understand where you're at, and kind of pushing for these changes, Do you have a team? Is this like you, like a top down thing, or is this peers that you're kind of establishing this with, or to superiors? Help me understand kind of where you
Yeah.
fit there.
So at first it was really just peers, right?
Yeah.
Then as people cycled out and we hired more people in, that was my first opportunity to have more of a mentorship role where I wasn't their direct supervisor, but they were, junior on the team and I was training them.
Okay.
And,
Nice.
and so that was kind of the first step there. And then because of the way that our little team was working, it did actually open up more opportunities for me professionally in terms of management opportunities and team leadership. When the team continued to grow as we grew more relationships, won more clients. We had analytics only clients, which is not usual for an ad agency. And it opened the door for us to do more media buying or creative work or things like that. But bringing in that work, we bring in more people and grow the team. And the way the whole kind of landscape of marketing has been changing and been involving data more and more and more, we become more and more and more important to the agency. But because of all of this kind of collaboration and this play theory principles inadvertently being put in, where it's rather than kind of having that be egocentric, it really was service centric, and so we continue to grow the team where now I have, I think, nine people on my team. We're trying to hire a 10th person right now, actually, and
Wow.
I presented this to my new supervisor, right, where my boss a few years ago left, and that's when I was promoted to director. And he had us put together our team plans, and this is where I actually formalized the play theory principles into a team plan, where I have it written in a document, and I presented this to him.
Yes.
But going into this toxic work culture, he told me to watch out. He said, be careful
Oh,
with that because people will take advantage of that. And I remember
yikes.
walking away from that meeting being just trying to think about it and what's the risk. And if I look at that point in my career, where had those principles gotten me? And they had elevated my career to this place where I had this position of influence within a mid-sized agency. I had people on my team I was supervising and mentoring. And so the thing that's at risk is someone else could get credit for the work that I'm doing or for the good ideas I might have or whatever's going on there. We move forward with those principles anyway. And
Nice.
and it's been great in terms of the stress at work or the politics of this person, these internal teams treating them like they're the enemy. It really creates a lot of negative energy, this uncertainty on this your status in the agency or how the agency is doing overall. But if you remove that, political play, and you're just there to make other people look good, you have a lot of confidence in terms of where you stand day to day. Even these people who would take advantage of your ideas, right, and say, they present it as their own, and even though you put in all this work or you and your team put in all this hard work, and now the strategy team gets credit for this new client and this new win, they know how they got there, and they got there with collaboration with you or your team. And the next time a project comes around, they still come to us and they still ask us for questions. We still have work. We're not getting, our team's not getting cut or anything like that because we're bringing value. And so that credit or those things that really do feed the ego really aren't adding the work value that I think a lot of us think that they do or fear that they do, when really taking this other approach it just really has opened a lot of doors and created more opportunities versus trying to take all credit for every good idea I ever had.
When you are looking inward, you are applying the law of diminishing returns. Nothing flourishes without the outward focus. And that for sure applies, as we heard you share just now, in a team setting. So I just want to appreciate what we just heard you share with us here for a second. So you went at the peer level, you started applying these play theory principles leaving your ego at the door, let go and play, looking outward, accepting and building, being present, all that. And then you started getting some mentor like relationships and opportunities, and you applied it there. Then you become a manager, you have a team, and then then it's game over. Then it's like, 10-0 team happiness, right? Because then you're calling the shots, and now, and against the counsel of the higher up, you went ahead and you baked play theory into your team strategy. Am I capturing
Yeah,
that right?
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Slow clap, man. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
And it's so cool to see, because I remember, you and I go way back. I don't know if we didn't mention this yet, but Erik and I, way back in high school, we kind of first stumbled upon these principles. There was a lot of fun and application and relationships built there, but just now here we are, years later, and to see you just so committed to implementing them, and to see and hear about the results and the impact that's having, is just so cool. And we got a strong player here on Team Happiness with Erik Eckern, and I'm so glad to have had this conversation with you, because these are very good principles. Two quick things I want to touch on that you shared is the environment you described when you came in, the toxic environment. It was not a safe environment for people to explore and think outside of the box, right? And so just a nugget here that I'm extracting from your story and everything you shared is everything you can do to create a safe environment for others to feel safe in asking questions, exploring, going outside of their comfort zone. That is really going to have a huge impact on the culture and really help you get momentum in the right direction. And so I love that you shared that, because we've all experienced that, where you've go into an environment that doesn't feel safe to either be
Right.
yourself, to question things. You just want to fall in line and kind of toe the line and just play it safe, because you feel like the stakes are high. And especially professionally speaking, we can feel that a lot, where the stakes are
Mhm.
very high. If you feel your job's at stake or a promotion's at stake, you're not going to tap into that creative, courageous energy that really moves the needle and
Right.
helps you expand and grow. And so I love that you brought that in. Man, Erik, thank you so much. We've already gotten so much out of this conversation, and I really appreciate, we don't always take the time to apply these principles in our professional lives. And so I appreciate this conversation where we're able to really dive deep and do that. And man, we didn't even get to any of the marriage or parenting stuff, but there was so much to cover there. We'll have to have you back on, I guess. The last question that we ask all of our guests on the Happiness Playbook is, what is one pro tip that we can give our listeners on how to apply the principles of play theory in their lives and experience happiness more fully?
It really is courage, right? It takes looking outward, letting things go is scary, right? But applying that, taking that first step out, working one-on-one with people, even as long as you take that first step out, take the courage to be open and to not know things, right? And to not be the smartest person. That takes courage, and that's a good quality, and people appreciate that. And so the thing you're afraid of people maybe thinking you're not smart, or that you maybe don't deserve this job, or whatever it is, they appreciate people asking questions. They appreciate people looking outward and trying to make someone else look better. And so you can overcome that fear and take courage.
I love it. Be brave, be bold in your love. One of my favorite lines from the live action Cinderella is, have courage and be kind. I think that kind of sums up what you're saying
Yeah.
here. Erik, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, we had the pleasure of sitting down with one of Team Happiness's star players, one of the MVPs here. So grateful that you took the time out of your schedule to add this value. That was really rich, deep conversation. So fun to talk with somebody who really gets it and has applied it. So thanks again, man. I really appreciate you taking the
Yeah.
time to do this.
Neil, I'm really impressed with you and everything that you're doing here. I really, since high school until now, like it really has mattered. And, through some of my darkest periods, even, it's these principles that have helped. And, in terms of like positive psychology and other things that I dabbled in college, but it's like, we're always trying to figure out, how can I be happy, right? How can I be better? And it's hard, right, to figure those things out. For some reason, life takes us a different way than makes us forget this, right? This idea of being like a child and letting go and play, and that's how we can find happiness. Like, it's just really mattered. And so again, I just really appreciate everything you're doing. If there's anything more I can do to support you or the Happiness Playbook or anything that you're doing, just let me know. I'm happy to do it.
I will hold you to that.
Yeah, please do. No, I mean it. Yes, 100%.
Oh boy, that was an awesome conversation. I hope that you got as much out of that as I did. Remember this week to be present. Don't multitask. Pay attention to the person that you're in a meeting with, or to your children, or whoever you're talking with, or just with yourself. Let's eliminate some of that distraction in our lives. And don't try to be the smartest person in the room. Leave your ego at the door and go in with the intention to learn. And when it comes to feedback, make sure that you think of the intention behind the feedback. You're on the same team. The how's going to be different, but the what and the why are the same. So keep that in mind. And of course, be courageous in applying these principles in your daily life. Sometimes it's scary. Sometimes you might feel like the stakes are really high, but the end result is always going to be stronger relationships, more confidence, and better communication. Thank you for tuning in to the Happiness Playbook. Remember that happiness is a skill and life is a team sport, and we are so glad to have you on our team. Catch you next week.